I saw this video where this guy's like, I only died almost died twice in the tornado chasing.
You know what happens when the power goes out during a thunderstorm?
The lights go out. Dude, yeah, this video.
In my car, this happened.
He almost gets yeeted by lightning.
Lightning would strike the
Goddamn smoked freaking inches, honestly.
I was almost struck by lightning, making this my second near-death experience of the year.
I feel this guy. I had it almost near that. Well, not as much as this guy. This lightning struck. It was far away. And off the distance, or like when I reviewed the footage, when I was showing my mom, I saw, well, okay, where is this ghoul lady at? Well, so I was... Crush. Same. I like watching all the animations. Dude. Remember action points in VAT. It affects the number of action points in VATs and your ability to sneak. Okay, that's a good idea to know. Chase tornadoes.
You've got two storms developing in an unstable atmosphere. The close storm is in a good road network, but has been struggling the last hour, while
But then the back one is poor Rosebud's good.
Slowly intensifying.
Oh.
Do you A, love the one you're with and wait for it to intensify?
That's a very good question.
Blast south 1.5 hours to the bigger storm. Or C, go to the Allsup's gas station and get a burrito. I chose B out of a gut feeling it would continue to
Yeah, I feel like I'd almost go with B, but I feel like...
And I didn't want to risk any cramping or emergency restroom delays. We're gonna have a phone call. Under the high base of our southern storm,
back in America.
swirling clouds were organizing into a funnel and drifting away from chaseable roads. Do you A, drive into the notch to keep the funnel in view a little longer and risk hail destroying your vehicle? B, escape south but risk not being able to see the funnel for another hour? C, obliviously walk into the Allsup's gas station and get a burrito? D, back into a pole?
No, no! No. Hey, what'd he say?
Oh, I just hit a thingy.
I said a thing.
I chose D, back into a pole, and then A, risk the notch in case of tornadoes.
That notch, though. You gotta be real careful, though. Don't want to fly too close to the sun now, do we?
It is merry-go-round. Yeah, there it is.
Just wait for the hail. I know it's gonna come down.
It's like a ghost. There we go. Not that.
Oh, that's a good tornado. It's well defined and far away.
Can we continue? Is there a road that goes south? There's not. As the tornado retreated over sketchy ranch roads with unmapped gates, a large hail was approaching fast. Do you A, abort, punching through the hail to catch up with the storm an hour down the road? B, go home. C, just sit there frozen with indecision. Or D, gamble on a sketchy ranch road, hoping to buy yourself a little more time with the tornado. I'm gonna try to go south and get it. I chose D, and the gamble paid off with a well-maintained gravel road. For the moment, anyway.
Doesn't take long for those gravel roads to start deteriorating quickly. I've seen that many times on this channel.
Might be it. Let's go down there anyway. That's where that tornado came through. Oh, every day. Limbs.
We're in no man's land. There's Bob's Road, and that's it.
Those are window breakers. They're falling just in front of a car. I feel like we're just out of the range. Nope, here they come. Look at that. Look at them falling. You can see them way up in there. Oh, look at that buzzard. Poor guy. Get out of there. Get out of there, buzzards. Go, 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 go. A new storm is exploding just to the south and will likely steal the thunder of the one we're on. Do you A, follow the buzzards and get on that storm? You already know the answer.
It's 6:47, and we're pouncing on the second storm.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about chasing storms is how far they are away and how much driving you've got to do. But if you put in the gas and you put in the time, you can get it. I know that because I've personally tried it. Is that it's like, okay,
You're okay. I can squeak by you. Crazy day.
Just watching, we're gonna take our house.
You're fine. It's really weak at the surface, just so you know. All right, well, I'm going to go down there. I think I can squeeze by him.
Honey, y'all better go the way he's gonna go. Honey, he's gonna go down, and I told him to go.
Pardon me, sir. Thank you.
You got the hell, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, look at this stuff.
Lifted. Is that it? Here's the rope.
Fun day of chasing tornadoes in the middle of nowhere, Texas, not hurting anybody. The last 6 days of chasing, I've gotten tornadoes every single day, including the stupid one in Kansas that was behind my little thingy. I saw the funnel cloud. I saw the spin up. It counts. And the next few days look like good chase days as well. Somebody needs to take the tornado catnip away from Mother Nature. She's out of control. I gotta get some rest, guys. Thank you so much.
High risk. This guy is so fun to watch.
Episode, Chris Jones caught right into a TF3 tornado and somehow survived, but now he doesn't have a car. Will he quit storm chasing, or will he get right back to it? Stay tuned to find out.
This is the EF Scout, did it? Yes. It is so trash.
2021, Doppler radar unveiled a beast hiding in the dark of night, with radar velocities well over 200 miles per hour. A tornado at this intensity will destroy every single thing in its path. And that's exactly what happened. The town of Mayfield, Kentucky took a direct hit. Large industrial buildings would be of rubble, including a candle factory, where 8 would lose their lives. In Princeton, Kentucky, the tornado would leave cycloidal marks, a trait that is associated with the highest end tornadoes. Bremen, Kentucky was This was where some of the worst damage occurred. In the weeks following, survey crews would go over the damage and determine this tornado was EF4 strength with a maximum wind speed of 190 miles per hour. To fully understand this decision, we need to go back in time.
The bomb.
In 1945, a 24-year-old Tatsuya Fujita would survey the damage left by the Nagasaki atomic blast. Fujita determined the bomb had detonated 520 meters above Nagasaki, and he was able to do this all from the patterns he observed in the debris. Years later in the United States, Fujita would continue to make brilliant observations. Ted would hypothesize that the swirling pattern observed in the tornado's path was due to smaller suction vortices.
And he was damn right.
And in 1971, Fujita would outline a new way to classify tornadoes. The more extreme the damage, the higher the tornado would be rated. It would only be 3 years until April 3rd, 1974, the first true test of the F scale. This tornado near Muncie, Indiana, would have a nearly identical structure to what was hypothesized by Ted Fujita, proving his theory right. Another great example of multiple vortex structure within a tornado happened in Xenia, Ohio, the same day. This video was captured by a 16-year-old Bruce Boyd and is considered to be some of the most important tornado footage ever captured. In the weeks following, Fujita would lead the largest tornado damage survey ever completed. Because of how big this outbreak was, Fujita needed 5 different Cessnas to complete all the surveys. Fujita would log intensity ratings and width along each tornado's path. 148 tornadoes would touch down in 12 different states as well as Canada. This event still holds the record for the most tornadoes in 24 hours. It really blows my mind how good of a job Fujita did in 1974 without the use of satellite imagery. The Xenia, Ohio tornado was considered to be the strongest tornado, and it was even given a preliminary rating of F6.
Oh yeah, right.
First and last time that would ever happen.
I think there's actually
It
2.
would be active for the next 30 plus years and would be used to rate over 50,000 tornadoes. At the beginning of 2007, a new scale would be implemented, the Enhanced Fujita Scale, or the EF scale for short. One big difference was that with the EF scale, the higher end tornadoes had a slightly lower projected wind speed. In addition, the National Weather Service would outline 28 different DIs, or damage indicators, that would determine the rating of a tornado. Like the Fujita scale, the EF scale required damage to be done for a tornado to get rated. This damage right here was from a tornado that was rated EF2. At a glance, this might look worse than EF2. However, the building that collapsed was a garage, and if you follow the direction of the debris, it's clear the wind was perpendicular to the garage door, causing the garage to fail catastrophically. Because this tornado produced damage to a known DI, the National Weather Service was able to confidently rate this tornado. That's not always the case. Many tornadoes track over open fields and don't do any damage. Since
Yet
its
they're
introduction
powerful.
in 2007, there have been nearly 10,000 EF0s, 6,300 EF1s, 1,600 EF2s, 403 EF3s, 85 EF4s, and only 9 EF5s. 1 out of every 2,500 tornadoes was EF5 strength in North America. That is an astronomically low number. I want to give my hot take. The EF scale in its current form is very outdated. Fully depending on damage to rate a tornado and determine its wind speed was a practice that was born out of necessity. Times have changed. We now have Doppler radar scanning a majority of the United States at all times. It is my belief that the maximum wind speeds within a tornado would be more accurately rated if the National Weather Service added a few more damage indicators and should also take into account Doppler radar, photogrammetry, and maybe even simulated environments. So, do I think these 10 tornadoes were the only tornadoes within the last 15 years to achieve winds higher than 200 miles per hour? No. The most ridiculous example of the EF scale misrepresenting a tornado strength happened on May 31st, 2013, the infamous El Reno, Oklahoma tornado.
I think it is.
Despite
I
having
agree with this
radar
guy.
indicated winds over 300 miles per hour, the worst damage this tornado would do was only EF3 damage. Because the damage is what determines the rating, the final rating of this tornado was EF3. The 2021 Western Kentucky Long Track Tornado is another candidate for tornadoes that probably should have been rated EF5. The worst damage produced by this tornado was near the town of Bremen, Kentucky, where multiple homes would be wiped clean off of their foundations. In the surveyor's notes, it stated that this home was well constructed, but the assigned wind speed was only 190 miles per hour. In my opinion, shredded debris left by the foundation that was swept clean is more than enough to justify an EF5 rating. On April 9th, 2015, this long-track, violent tornado would strike the towns of Rochelle and Fairdale, Illinois. This tornado would leave an extremely visible scar on the ground, similar to what was seen with the Western Kentucky tornado, except on a much larger scale. Videos captured by residents of the area showed how violent the winds were contained within this tornado. The National Weather Service would survey the damage and determine at 20 different spots the maximum wind speeds were 200 miles per hour. That is exactly 1 mile per hour less than the threshold required to achieve EF5 status. It seems unlikely that the tornado wasn't over 200 miles per hour at one of these 20 locations. I am not alone in my criticisms. In 2021, a paper released by well-respected scientists in the field states that supercell tornadoes are much stronger and wider than damage-based ratings indicate. Their data shows that over 20% of tornadoes have winds that are capable of causing catastrophic EF4 and EF5 damage. This is in stark contrast to the current rate assigned by the National Weather Service of less than 0.5%. Their paper states that the NWS underestimates tornadoes by an average of 1.5 categories. Many might say that tornado ratings don't matter. That is not the case. Having an accurate representation
there needs to be a scale of destruction.
Tornado safety.
For example, a lot of explosions destroy shit, right?
Of using damage,
but there's a certain degree, there's a certain caliber to them.
Has been the best method since his original usage in 1971. However, with the advent of modern technology, I think it's time to adopt additional techniques for this task.
Explain the inconceivable F6. Yes, this did actually happen. An F6 actually occurred. However, you know, F5 is supposed to be peak intensity and nothing can beat the F5. So therefore, this F6 was swiftly downgraded to F5. Rightfully so.
You getting that? Hold on, here we go. Hold on. You ready? Yeah, tell him, Blake. Tell him what about it.
Cat.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly. Today's video might be a little chaotic. I'm filming pretty late, and that's simply because I have a lot going on right now. I'm in the middle of launching my brand, Two Storms Apparel. We are focusing on severe weather education and mental health advocacy, two things you all know I care immensely about. And depending on when this video goes out, I'll either be in the process of or have already done the soft launch. So if you haven't already and you are interested in the Two Storms mission, the charities we're going to be donating to, any kind of educational content, and the apparel, including these earrings, you can follow the Two Storms social media in the description down below.
No, that's cool. Those earrings
Instagram,
are actually pretty cool.
TikTok, Twitter, and the website for everything listed below, in addition to my regular social media. So just to get that out of the way, things are a little chaotic right now, but I'm so incredibly excited to put this out there. And I'll have another video talking about this very soon. So yeah, thank you guys for the patience. Yeah, I think that's it on that end. Yeah. Moving on to today's topic, it's going to be a little bit lighter and more fun than usual, and that's simply because the past couple of videos have weighed really heavy on me, and I think it's important that I give myself a little bit of a mental break in between some of the heavier pieces that I am constantly reading about, and I know you guys will be understanding of that, so I hope you will enjoy content like today's. And that brings us to the idea for today's video, which is F6 tornadoes. Why on earth are we talking about F6 tornadoes when they don't exist? And we all know that F6 tornadoes don't exist, and to that I would say you're right, yes. But I do want to push back on that just a little bit. Over all the years that I've been interested in tornadoes and of all of the literature that I've read about them, which has been a lot, there's been a couple of times where I've come across really interesting documents about a sort of ambiguous or inconceivable F6 tornado. And it was actually just recently, as I was writing a script for the Lubbock, Texas tornado, that I came across a statement from the National Weather Service from this year, disclosing that the Lubbock, Texas tornado was actually originally not rated an F5, but an F6. And finally, not long after, I came across a title of a very interesting Thomas Grizzoli's book, F5 to F6 tornadoes. After that, I knew I really wanted to talk with you all about this because I find the idea and the concept of it to be so intriguing. To be absolutely clear to anyone who is watching with a clenched fist or about to pop a blood vessel, the F6 tornado, as we're going to discuss today, and anything more than the EF5 rating we use today, is nothing more than an immeasurable theoretical construct. But it's an idea that I do really think is worth exploring just a little bit. And finally, before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's video, I do want to add a disclaimer. Today's topic is meant to be fun and certainly not meant to be taken seriously. We're just having an interesting conversation about something that I think you guys will enjoy. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about the inconceivable F6 tornado.
Yeah, that actually happened. There were like 2 of them. No more than 2 though. There was at least one F6 tornado to actually occur. But again, Fujita apparently said that it's way too strong. F5 should be top of the line, which I agree with. And so it was very quickly bumped down to F5.
About tornadoes is that we still really don't understand fully their innermost intricacies and just how powerful they truly can be. Therefore, in my personal opinion and in the opinion of many others in the weather community, the idea that there's a tornado or could be a tornado that exceeds the upper EF5 echelon is really not out of the realm of possibilities. And you know who else thought this way as well? Dr. Ted Fujita. In order to have a discussion on the idea of the inconceivable F6 tornado, we have to set the stage, starting of course with the Fujita scale and its creator, Dr. Ted Fujita. While I know most of you are already familiar with the original Fujita scale and some of its concepts, there's so much more rich history and depth to Dr. Ted Fujita's contribution to meteorology, and I want to discuss it just a little bit more. Tetsuya Theodore Fujita was a Japanese-American meteorologist who
You gotta give him credit, even though we nuked the hell out of his country, he just said, I got you fam, and like helped us out. What a guy. We to a point didn't deserve his respect for what we did to his country. Yeah, he gave it.
Remains of the wreckage in Nagasaki in 1945. A few short years later, when invited to study storm formation at the University of Chicago in 1953, Fujita absolutely flourished in his field. Being exposed to the wild twisters of the United States allowed Fujita to recreate scenes of destruction and understand the inner workings of tornadoes, which was something that had never really been done before. And it wasn't long after observing these storms that he began to discover groundbreaking new concepts to meteorological studies. Fujita was the first to introduce the idea of the wall cloud from which tornadoes often descend. He was also the first scientist to recognize multiple smaller suction vortices within apparent circulation, which was a major revelation in tornado research. He even discovered the phenomenon of downburst and microburst after being called to the tragic crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 66. The discovery of microburst and downburst led to dramatic industry-level changes in aviation that are still used in pre-flight checks today. When you hear the wind shear check, that is actually in part due to Dr. Ted Fujita's contribution. These contributions were nothing short of revolutionary in the field of meteorology, particularly in the mid to late 20th century when the technology still was a little lacking. So it's because of the life work of Dr. Ted Fujita, trailblazing scientist and tornado researcher who dared to understand these violent storms, that we eventually got the Fujita scale. And it was really unquestionable that the only person on Earth who really understood tornadoes well enough at that point to create a system that could categorize the world's most violent storms, it was Dr. Ted Fujita. Now that we've laid the foundation, let's talk about the Fujita scale itself, from its conception to modernization, and some of which I think will actually really surprise you. Most of you are already familiar with the general concept of both the older and the newer Fujita scale. Both are a 6-tier scale that seek to rate tornadoes from
7 actually,
F or
EFU.
0 being the weakest to an F or an EF5 being the strongest tornadoes that we know of. What you might be less familiar with, however, is the original concept of the scale. The original system was designed to integrate 2 previously established systems, the Mach number scale and the Beaufort wind scale, and these 2 would be used to help create the Fujita scale. This scale, in theory, would give the best estimate, or really an educated guess, as to the damage and potential damage that could be caused by tornadoes. The original Fujita scale was actually designed as a 13-tier system, from F0, of course, being the lightest damage, all the way up into an F12. However, the scale really only went up to the
Thank
highest
goodness we didn't
known
get
damage that it
F12,
ever
dude. That'd be
caused,
so
which
much
was
harder to
estimated
rate
at
them.
300 miles per hour and was the F5 tier. There was, however, room above the F5 for more tiers which would reflect damage that we've never seen before or really knew to be possible. Particularly the tier just above the F5, the inconceivable F6 tornado tier. And the idea of the F6 tier is of particular interest because in theory it's not very far away from some of the tornadoes that we've seen before, which are over 300 miles per hour, including the 2011 El Reno Piedmont Twister, 2013 Moore, 1999 Moore, maybe Phil Campbell Hackleberg, amongst several others. So that brings us to really today's question. Is the idea of an F6, or more generally an inconceivable tornado, really that far away? I don't really think so, and neither did Dr. Ted Fujita. In fact, the F6 rating has been given twice by
Yes,
Dr. Ted Fujita.
there you go, I was
Once
right.
in the 1974 super outbreak to the Xenia, Ohio tornado, and again in 1970 from the Lubbock, Texas tornado. In both instances, the tornadoes were dubbed as having caused, quote, inconceivable damage when initially surveyed and photographed by Dr. Ted Fujita, although they would later, of course, be downgraded to conform to the original scale. And I also do want to mention something really interesting here. Dr. Ted Fujita wasn't the only expert in tornadoes that believed that there was an idea that there could be an inconceivable F6 tornado. Of the many works Thomas Grizzoulis has published in his career, the book's Significant Tornadoes being the most popular by far, there is one book that stuck out to me more than any of the others, and it's titled F5 to F6 Tornadoes, published in 2001. And it's in this book, F5 to F6 Tornadoes, that Thomas Grizzoulis states, quote, "In my opinion, if there ever was an F6 tornado caught on video, it was the Pampa, Texas tornado of 1995. And I'm not really here to question their ratings, because that's not something I'm ever really interested in doing. I'm more so questioning the scale itself. How are we really so sure of the EF1 to EF5 ratings when we don't ourselves fully understand the intricacies of tornadoes? It just seems like there's so much more room to improve. And really at this point in 2023, meteorologists, the National Weather Service, wind engineers, anyone who is really familiar with the Fujita scale or actively uses it knows that it's a flawed system at best, and it's not really what it needs to be in terms of accuracy. And that's kind of undisputed, to the point where NOAA has actually stated that, quote, precise wind speed numbers are actually guesses and have never been scientifically verified. Different wind speeds may cause similar looking damage from
Yeah,
place to
F
place.
scale does a
Even
lot
building
with
to
damage. Not damage,
without
wind.
engineering
Let's say
analysis
wind.
of a tornado's damage in any event, the actual wind speeds needed to cause that damage are unknown, end quote. So that should tell you kind of everything you need to know about the way the EF system today as it stands is. All of this leaves a lot of room
You know,
for
as a
us to wonder.
Meteorological like person,
And particularly
like
wonder
a
how
enthusiast,
some of these
F scale's
tornadoes
so
actually
busted.
truly
EF
are,
scale's
and
way
how
worse.
powerful can they
EF scale needs to be
potentially
changed.
be. And when you put it that way, it almost seems like there has to be some way that they
Maybe like RF, reformed Fujita. Or MF. No, MF would be memed. Like modernized Fujita. But it desperately needs to be changed, because you cannot tell me it is absolute bull that the monstrous 2.6 mile wide EF3 tornado that could have literally destroyed a city, whether if you placed on top, had, you know, wind speed rivaling that of a Category 5 freaking hurricane, didn't do anything. Like, it wasn't EF5.
are tornadoes possible of, or that have already been past that F5 or EF5 upper echelon rating. As it
Sucks the towers off the ground, throws around skyscrapers. NWS. Best I can do is an EF4. Now I'm taking a big risk. That is so true.
the EF scale and really the Fujita scale generally, without better technology, the rating that's given to any tornado is really hindered to the structural integrity of whatever the strongest building it hit was. So to get a better understanding of the tornado's intensity at its peak, you would need the core of the tornado or one of the suction vortices to hit the strongest building in the area, and then be able to deduce how strong it was from whatever damage it caused, which statistically, for the strongest part of a tornado to hit your best building on a good day, is very slim. Even the National Weather Service themselves recognize that winds greater than 319 miles per hour, which is where the EF5 rating caps out, is really possible in theory, and not just possible, but probable. I do want to also note that the EF5 rating does technically include anything that is an EF5 or above, so it would technically include the idea of the hypothetical F6 inconceivable tornado, but of course that's not as fun. You know, we want to know if it's an F6 tornado. We want to know if it goes beyond the EF5 rating or not. At this point though, in October of 2023, it's been over 10 years since we have had even our last EF5 rating. It almost seems like the trend now is to give EF4 violent ratings and to really conserve the EF5 rating for only the singular most incredible, unbelievable
She doesn't.
damage
She makes a very good point.
Possible, and it's really strange to think about how many EF5 tornado ratings were given out just 10 years ago in 2011, 2013. to now
It's
the
like nothing.
standard being so high that we can't get any EF5 ratings anymore. Not questioning.
Yeah, like
it,
why?
I'm just saying it.
Ever since like
The
after
EF5
20, like
is the inconceivable tornado, and we're just
ever
not
since,
getting
like-
that rating anymore. I know it has more to do with the building codes, but
2000, like 13, they've definitely gone a little bit soft on the codes. We need to upgrade Enhanced
so let's talk
Vegeta.
about
It is
the
not.
future of the EF scale.
It is
Even
not
if
up to date, in my
concerns
opinion. It
about
needs to be
the
reformed.
Efficacy of the Enhanced Vegeta scale are still very much in question, mainly concerning the relationships between the observed degrees of damage and the wind speed ranges, which are notable flaws in the system. Currently, there are plans to revise the Fujita scale once again, largely spearheaded by Tim Marshall, and I will have a really fascinating article about the new Fujita scale in the description for you, because it's a great read and I do encourage you all to check it out. So with the new Fujita scale, one of the more recent
10 tornadoes that leave me unsettled.
Dude, this is a horrible gaming experience. I didn't live like this. Well, I don't know.
Just explaining Bethesda the game at first build.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly. Today I wanted to try something a little bit different, and rather than doing a deep dive on one particular tornadic event, I wanted to talk about multiple events. Over the years, there have been certain tornadoes or events that I've seen in video or read about in literature that have always stuck with me. You will notice after watching my channel for a while that I tend to cover events that are in a way shocking or have some sort of enigmatic nature. And that's because I've always enjoyed things that are in a way bizarre or inexplicable. There's something particularly perplexing about certain tornado events, and I think that's what draws me into these stories and events. So with that being said, today I want to talk about my top 10 tornado events that have always left me a little unsettled. Manchester, South Dakota isn't on this list simply because it was hit by a tornado. It was destroyed and never came back to life. It's a tornado ghost town. Manchester, originally known as Fairview, was born in the 19th century from the thriving railroad industry. It wasn't long after the turn of the 20th century that Manchester saw its peak, with a few hundred residents and all the businesses necessary to run a quaint town. But economic hardships suffocated the small town. And by 1944, the railroad that was once the foundation of the town's prosperity officially shut down, and by the turn of the 21st century, only 100 residents remained. And that brings us to the final fatal blow. On
Railroad town. Once the railroad or something goes away, it's
now
dead.
known to the locals as Tornado Tuesday, would produce over 67 tornadoes within just 8 hours.
Whew.
One of which was an F4 tornado that formed just south of Manchester. The massive tornado engulfed the entire town of Manchester with over 200 mile-per-hour winds. The town and its outdated buildings were no match for the storm. Incredibly, there were only 4 reported injuries, and while it seems like a miracle
No
that
fatalities.
there were no fatalities, the
Nice.
tornado had taken the life of the very town itself. The town of Manchester, which was already a weak memory to most, never rebuilt. Just the next year, in 2004, Manchester was officially disincorporated by the state. Today, the remains of the town are still present. There is a monument for the town of Manchester to sort of memorialize it, and you can still go through today and see it. One notable piece of information about this tornado is that it actually holds a Guinness World Record for having the greatest pressure drop ever measured within a tornado. And this was measured by none other than Tim Samaras. He's often said that this is one of his greatest accomplishments in storm chasing, rightfully so, especially considering he had dropped the probe just 82 seconds before the tornado actually hit the instrument. Manchester really just quietly disappeared into obscurity, and I find that to be so bone-chilling.
Just like, what's it called? I'm trying to think of the other towns.
Of the world's worst tornado tragedies in recorded history, while tornadoes in the United States usually hold the most discussion, actually, some of the most violent and deadly tornadoes come from Bangladesh. In fact, geographically,
Yeah, Bangladesh, dude. Tornadoes there?
Environments in the world for tornado formation.
And the building codes
Bangladesh
are different
averages
there
about
than
6
here.
tornadoes per year, and unfortunately,
It's actually
Bangladesh
the deadliest
is
tornado in
for
world
a
history is.
short-lived yet particularly violent tornado season means that events that do happen here can and will be particularly devastating. One of the most critical elements to consider and to discuss when we look at tornadoes in Southeast Asia and in other countries generally is the disproportionately lesser amount of resources they have to both prepare and adequately handle tornadoes as they happen. So that means even an EF2 or EF3 rated tornado has exponentially more consequences, and that's one of the many tragic truths about tornadoes in Bangladesh, and that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about the deadliest tornado in recorded history. On April 26, 1989, what is widely believed to be an F5 intensity tornado struck the Manikganj district in Bangladesh. The twister struck the town with estimated wind speeds over 200 miles per hour, over 1 mile in width, and traveling over 50 miles in total. This violent tornado carved through the regions of Manikganj and Satriya, where the most intense damage occurred. In just an hour and a half, 1,300 fatalities would occur, 12,000 more would be injured, and over 80,000 people would lose their homes. Those numbers are so
80,000 people.
Numbers, and frankly quite hard to fathom 1,300 deaths. And it's also widely understood that the fatalities backed by eyewitness reports are much higher than the official recorded totals. The aftermath photos are just so gut-wrenching. Tornado destruction is already difficult to look at and to digest when it happens here at home. But when we look at a tornado disaster in another country, especially like Bangladesh, there's a whole different subset of issues when we start talking about a disaster of this magnitude in a country with less resource to provide relief. Outside of destroying tens of thousands of homes, this tornado completely destroyed essential crops, thousands of livestock. On top of that, prior to this specific tornado event in April, the area had already been experiencing a particularly difficult drought for the past 6 months, then promptly being followed by one of the most devastating tornado events in recent history. This is simply one of the worst, if not the worst, tornado tragedy in recorded history. I find this one so disturbing, not only because the death toll was so high. This is an example of the devastating potential of a violent tornado in an area like Bangladesh, where you have a densely populated region that is more susceptible and doesn't have access to proper shelter. And truly, there are so many tornadoes that happen in countries outside of the United States, like China and Bangladesh, that are never surveyed, never measured with proper instrumentation, and we will simply never know the true magnitude of. I think it's sad that this one doesn't get covered more because it's not one of those classic American tornadoes, but truly it was a tragedy unmatched.
Right now, get 2-for-1 windows and no interest for 1 year. Hurry, call now.
Oh, crap.
The story of the town of Glacier, Texas is wrought with disaster and ill fate. Glacier, Texas, like many small towns born in the 19th and 20th centuries, was born through the arrival of the railway in 1887. By 1915, the town was reaching its peak, bustling with a population just over 300 and all the buildings that it needed to thrive and be successful. But the period of prosperity would be very short-lived. In 1916, Glacier would experience its first major tragedy. A large fire broke out in the middle of town, destroying all of the essential businesses. By 1920, the population of Glacier, Texas would drop to less than half of what it had been just a few years prior. And tragedy would only continue for the ill-fated town. On April 9th, 1947, a now infamous day in the Weather Enterprise, a series of storms would go on to produce violent tornadoes that would devastate multiple towns. During the outbreak, one of the most intense storms would move directly over the town of Glacier. Some eyewitnesses report this tornado within the storm being over 2 miles in width. The tornado would completely devastate the town and cause 17 fatalities. With little warning of the storm, people barely had time to get into shelter. It's also reported that 2 people who were together were found some 3 miles apart after the tornado. The series of twisters would then move into the border and eventually into Oklahoma, where they would continue to cause widespread damage to multiple towns and cause ultimately dozens of fatalities. This would include the infamous Woodward tornado, where an estimated 107 people would lose their lives as well. After the outbreak, Glacier was devastated. With the population already having significantly dropped through decades of hardship, there was barely anything left to rebuild. By 1959, the post office would close, and a few years later, there were no reported businesses operating in Glacier. And sometime after, there's no exact pinpoint when, but the town of Glacier would ultimately become known as a ghost town. This is another example of a ghost town that you can go see today. I believe that the jail cell...
That jail cell, yeah, I've heard about that.
See that if you want. It is one of the only, if not the only, remaining structure in the area. Tornadoes in Italy are quite rare.
Ooh, Italian tornadoes.
Anomalous events today.
I never heard about these. They do exist.
Were so powerful and mystifying.
There's one EF4 that cleared the entire country.
Like an old legend. In early December of 1851, 2 tornadoes are said to have formed near Marsala as they approached land. The city's port, important businesses were all destroyed as the waterspouts moved inland. Ships, ports, important businesses, people's homes and lives were all lost, both on the water as they moved inland and in the city itself. Not only that, extremely heavy rain and hail caused extensive damage to the areas surrounding it, which would ultimately cause damage to crops, livestock, and essential farmland. The death toll is estimated between 200 and 500. Some resources even claiming up to 700 fatalities from this singular event. It's written that the Sicilian twisters are the oldest ever documented on Italian soil. Without pictures and only relying on the stories of the Sicilian tornadoes, many of the interpretations of this event are done through drawings, and I find them to be so fascinating. Like I said, they give off this really old, almost fabled feeling to them. And I can't imagine what it must have been like to experience tornadoes of this magnitude without any kind of warning or perhaps even any understanding of what they actually really were. On April 12th through 13th of 2020, an outbreak, now known as the 2020 Easter outbreak, tore through the southeastern United States with over 141 confirmed tornadoes, 32 fatalities, and $3 billion in damage. This was a major event. At 3:39 p.m. on April 12th, what is now known to be the infamous Basefield Soso tornado touched down, and although this tornado largely went through rural areas, it was frighteningly violent, slamming homes and uprooting trees along the way. This tornado would carve through 68 miles in 5 different counties in the state of Mississippi. Ultimately, this tornado would garner an EF4 rating with 8 fatalities within this one single tornado. The National Weather Service Damage Survey found the tornado's peak width to be 2.25 miles, making it the largest tornado on record in Mississippi and frankly one of the widest in recorded history. This one is
Yeah,
particularly
it is a
eerie
big
and horrifying
rule.
to me for a very specific reason. There are a lot of tornadoes that happen out there in the open that absolutely have the potential to set records and be the next Moore or El Reno, but they just don't hit anything. They are, in their own right, particularly terrifying because we're at their complete mercy, whether or not they're going to hit a town, at what time, and all you can do is wait through it and hope that it doesn't tear through a populated area. There's long been this myth that tornadoes can't form or cross over water or mountains.
No, that is
Simply
such
some areas
lying.
protected, which is simply not true. And the Great Natchez tornado is a terrifying example of this very thing. The 1840 Great Natchez tornado is the second deadliest in American history and is one of the earliest recorded examples of why tornadoes can and will move over bodies of water. The day started out as excessively sultry. By 1 o'clock p.m. near Concordia, a massive tornado forms moving northeast along the Mississippi River. It's said that this powerful twister moving alongside the river stripped the forest completely from both shore sides. The tornado then hits Natchez Landing, throwing 116 of the 120 total flatboats docked in the river, ultimately drowning most of the crew members and passengers. Other boats that were inland were thrown. One report claims a piece of a steamboat was found some 30 miles away from its original port.
Ooh.
Some 48 people were reported to have been killed on land, with another 269 fatalities occurring on the river. Few dispute that the death toll was likely much higher than the official count, one reason being due to the amount of bodies that were presumably lost in the river, another reason being that at the time slaves were not
Yeah,
counted.
slaves, they didn't even count
The death
them
toll was
as
likely much higher than the some 300
fatalities.
that
They
were
didn't give a shit about those.
at the time, the Free Trader
souls.
stated that, quote, reports have come in from Louisiana and the rage of the tempest was terrible. Hundreds killed, dwellings swept from their foundations, the forest uprooted, and the crops beaten down and destroyed. Never, never, never was there such desolation and ruin. There's also no way for us to understand the wind speed or what the official rating would have been. However, it's pretty apparent from the clues that we have based on the eyewitness reports that this was in the upper echelon of violent tornadoes. May 3rd, 1999 is one of, if not the most infamous day in the recent weather enterprise. The environment that spawned what is widely recognized as the strongest tornado in recent history, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado, wasn't the only violent tornado that spawned on this day. The outbreak was far from over. The historic tornado touched down late on May 3rd, 1999 at 9:25 p.m., just a few hours after the Bridge Creek Moore tornado has gone through. The massive tornado would travel over 35 miles throughout its lifetime and is reported to have easily exceeded 1 mile in width. The town of Mulhall took the brunt of this horrifying storm. Over 60% of homes would be destroyed, including essential structures like the elementary school and city's water tower. The tornado would ultimately dissipate around 10:45 p.m., but the night wasn't over for Logan County and the areas of Mulhall. Another F3 tornado would actually hit the same counties, the surrounding counties near Mulhall, causing a lot of damage, which ultimately would be virtually indistinguishable with some of the damage that happened earlier from the Mulhall tornado. So some of these areas were actually hit more than once. Ultimately, 2 people would be killed in Mulhall. Now this is where it starts to get interesting. Meteorologist and storm chaser Roger Edwards believes that this tornado was as violent, or perhaps more violent, than the Bridge Creek Moore, Oklahoma tornado. And remember, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado had a recorded wind speed of 301 miles per hour. This is a really big claim for someone to make. Like the Bridge Creek Moore tornado, A Doppler on wheels was also present during this storm. So earlier they had captured the Bridge Creek Moore tornado and subsequently continued on throughout the night and would capture the Mulhall tornado as well. And shockingly, the Doppler on wheels would document the Mulhall tornado as the largest ever observed core flow circulation with a distance of 5,200 feet between peak velocities on either side of the tornado, with around a 4-mile width of peak wind gusts exceeding 96 miles per hour, which quantitatively would make it the widest tornado ever recorded by far. Joshua Werman, who, as many of you know, is the engineer and creator of the Doppler on wheels, and Dr. Lee would go on to analyze the 3D structure of the storm in a later report in 2005, published in an article in the Journal of Atmospheric Sciences. So if Mulhall was recorded as supposedly the widest tornado in history, why is it not regarded as, why do we not accept it as widest tornado in recorded history? I thought it was El Reno. Well, I've been working on trying to find a good response, and I don't have a definitive answer for you. I've read some people saying that Mulhall is sort of cheated out of being considered the widest tornado in history, and I don't think that's the case at all. From what I understand, the wind speeds are quantifiably the widest, but aren't necessarily considered tornadic wind speeds that would need to be the actual widest in recorded history. I think that there's an abundance of data, and the storm has been extensively analyzed, and there's a reason why it's not considered the widest storm in history. I don't think it's been cheated out of. I trust the scientists, and so take that as you will. I will be leaving links to the studies that are done down below if you'd like to take a look, if you're someone who enjoys reading the physics and mathematics that are involved in the measurements, just in case you want to look at them.
Twins.
For number 8, we are going to be talking about 2 separate events, both of which are twins. The concept of twin tornadoes in meteorology is one that elicits excitement and awe and fear all at the same time.
Cat.
There are several really incredible and horrifying examples of twin tornadoes throughout the decades, but these are the 2 that stick out to me the most. Palm Sunday outbreak of 1965 is still one of the most infamous and deadly in American history. With over 47 confirmed tornadoes throughout 6 states, 137 fatalities, and over 1,200 injuries, this is certainly one of the most impactful events. And I'm talking specifically about the Palm Sunday twins. These twin tornadoes are from Dunlap, Indiana, as they pass through Elkhart. This was just one example of several incredibly violent tornadoes that passed through on the Palm Sunday outbreak. One woman even quotes that the Palm Sunday twins, seeing them in person, was the closest to hell that she will ever be. Truthfully, the 1965 Palm Sunday outbreak is so notable in the Weather Enterprise that I will likely cover it at some point because there's a lot to it. The next set of twins I want to talk about are quite recent. I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking
Pilger.
about. The 2014 Pilger twins.
Pilger.
On the afternoon
I
of
can never
June 16th,
pronounce.
2014,
I'm so sorry for the
outbreak
people that live
was
in that
underway
town.
in southeast Nebraska. Multiple tornadoes would spawn from several different supercells across the state, but by far the most interesting were the Pilger twins. 6 miles southwest of the town of Pilger, not one, but 2 tornadoes would form and ultimately cross paths, producing one of the most seemingly unimaginable images. 2 massive, low precipitation, photogenic twin tornadoes.
And
The
not
twins
like
would
they
tear
came
through
from
the
like
northern
two
and central
other
plains
cells.
of Nebraska, killing 2, injuring several more people, and causing F4 intensity damage for both of them. Again, this is really unheard of. Not one violent tornado in a set of 2, but both were violent. Although I'm positive most of you have already seen it already. If you haven't and you want to check out in-depth video of the twins, go check out Pecos Hank's video on it. It's extremely well documented as always.
Okay, you're deep in the jungle, hanging with a friendly jaguar. Or how about...
9. Hallam, Nebraska.
On May 22nd, 2004, a tornado outbreak was ongoing through portions of central Iowa and southeastern Nebraska. By 7:30 p.m., a small F1 intensity tornado forms just southwest of Dakin, Nebraska, causing minimal damage to silos. But as the storm continued to grow, it was apparent that it was 3 p.m., the tornado now rapidly strengthened to high-end F4 intensity, just as it's reaching the town of Hallam. It's now 2.5 miles wide, the widest in recorded history at the time.
Yeah,
The town
2.5.
of Hallam took
That is what we would call a
intense damage, with most
chunker.
of the homes and farms taking some kind of intense structural damage, if not being completely destroyed. Ultimately, the tornado would end up with an F4 rating with 1 fatality and 38 injuries. At the time, this was a really groundbreaking record. A 2.5 mile wide tornado is almost unfathomably large. And we have to remember that this record wouldn't be broken until the 2013 El Reno tornado, which is only a little bit wider than this tornado was. But in its own right, the Hallam tornado really holds its own as being certainly one of the widest and frankly eeriest tornadoes in recent history, and for some reason goes forgotten a lot of the time.
Eli Manitoba.
Number 10 is the
Oh,
2007
this one's a weird one.
tornado.
This tornado picked up an entire house and shredded it in midair like a freaking fragmentation bomb. They thought it was like F3, but then when they saw that house get ripped up, whole, okay, an entire house in the air, and then it just got shredded, they immediately upped it to F5 intensity. Rightfully so. And that was Canada's only EF5, or only F5.
2007, Canada got its first and last F5 tornado, and certainly one of the most photogenic tornadoes I've ever seen. Unfortunately,
Oh, its path. Its path is so weird, dude. You gotta look up the video of its path.
Blown off their foundation, which of course is indicative of extreme violence. 2 semi-trucks were even blown off the road. It's very apparent that this was certainly a violent.
It's almost like it was alive. It almost specifically aimed for the town. Like it was going south, right, and the town was like right here, and the tornado went yoink, and it went boing. It went boing, right through the town.
So, although the town and several buildings took intense structural damage, there were no serious injuries, no fatalities. Could have been a lot worse. Tornadoes like this one are particularly scary to me because they are an example of how violent tornadoes can happen in areas where we, at the very least, expect them. This goes along with the sort of stereotypes and myths that have been perpetuated for decades, if not centuries, about the behaviors of tornadoes that people typically expect, and time again those are proven to be wrong, and this is a classic example of being proven wrong. And I hope by using some of these very anomalous events as examples, we can sort of start taking into account that although very rare, these types of events do happen, and we need to really stop believing in these really old, out-of-date myths about storms and tornadoes. Alright, so that is my top 10 list of tornado events that make me lose sleep at night. I don't think any event will ever top Jarrell and Joplin for me in terms of being horrifying.
Joplin was hell.
Those two have always been and probably will always be at the very top of my list for events that are just so horrifying to me. But I've already done 2 incredibly in-depth videos on those. If you haven't seen them, I'll link some cards. I do have a Twitch channel now. I'm not always going to be talking about tornadoes on there. I do like to play video games, so if you want to follow my Twitch, you can. Go check out my Twitter if you would like to see more daily updates from me, I guess. I think that's everything. As always,
Bridge Creek Moor. Dude, that was a bad day. Creek Moor, F5 tornado. The very first tornado to ever be used to declare a tornado emergency. A rare and exceedingly dangerous sign. Like, if there's tornado warning and you don't listen, like, that's one thing, but an emergency is the very worst warning you can ever receive, and it's the last thing you'll ever want to see. There's only been 200 reported, roughly like 10, 15 per year. Like, this was a big ass boy too, and it went right through Moore, Oklahoma, like a pretty big town.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly. Today we are covering a very highly requested tornado, and it is the prolific 1999 Moore F5 tornado. Before we jump right into the video today, although I normally will have a viewer discretion advisory at the beginning of all my videos, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an extra heads up because today we're going to be not only talking a little bit more in depth about the fatalities and injuries associated with this event, but we are going to be seeing.
I knew a mother was sucked out of a.
Typically willing to post on
Hey, what are those things called? An overpass. They were sucked out of the girders.
What I want to do today is have a discussion about
Unfortunately,
shelter safety.
Please listen to what I say. Don't take shelter. Yup, exactly what she just said. Don't take shelter in an overpass. It is a lie. I'm not trying to say, oh, it's a lie propagated by the government. No, it actually is a lie. It is a very dangerous misconception that people have with tornadoes. Is that overpasses can save you. Overpasses will not save you. Overpasses act as wind tunnels, inducing a stronger wind effect. After this happens, like, imagine this, right? Like, how triangular, right? The air rushes in through the tunnel, and it makes the air go faster, basically. Do you really think you're going to survive triple-digit winds?
And we have a lot to talk about today, so let's just get right into it. Moore, Oklahoma was originally founded in 1889 and was a very tiny community for nearly 100 years before becoming a full-fledged city in 1961 as industrial development began and the population rapidly grew from around 1,200 in the 1960s to just over 18,000 10 years later in 1970. So a lot of big growth happening. By 1999, Moore is a decently sized suburb of Oklahoma City with a population just over 40,000. Moore, Oklahoma is located between Oklahoma City and Norman, and of course is in the heart of Tornado Alley.
It is often set out from Oklahoma City. It's in the middle of America, in the Great Plains, halfway between the east and west coasts. And this part of the Midwest is known as Tornado Alley because of the special set of weather conditions that occur when warm air from the Caribbean moving northwards is pushed up by cold air coming down from the north.
Yep.
The clouds that form can stretch up to 40,000 feet or more. Up there, something else is going on. The jet stream. This fast-moving air blows the top of the storm into an anvil shape, and if the winds are right, the whole storm starts to rotate. This type of storm is called a supercell, and it's at the bottom of these that the really big tornadoes form.
Plains may be known for their outbreaks, but Moore, Oklahoma is synonymous with violent tornadoes.
I will never live in Moore, Oklahoma. One EF5, one EF5, one F5, one EF5.
Are more than familiar with tornado outbreaks. So we also know that it takes more than a generic tornado setup to get these people concerned. And frankly, for this outbreak, we initially don't have that level of concern. This setup in particular is really interesting because while it is conventional in the sense that all of the larger scale parameters were there for a tornado outbreak, there was very little to no anticipation going into this event, and honestly not that much discussion happening around it either. We will get more into this later, but for now, here's our main parameters. In the days leading up to May 3rd, 1999, and what would eventually become the strongest tornado ever recorded, we start off with a broad, negatively tilted trough moving from the western half of the United States into the plains. We know that low pressure systems are conducive to severe weather already because they have winds blowing into them, and the air is relatively thin, which means it can easily move up around other air masses, making the atmosphere more unstable. With that system of low pressure, we also have decently strong winds in the mid to upper atmosphere as well. Because it's now approaching summer months, we also have our ample heat and moisture moving from the Gulf of Mexico being pushed into the Great Plains as well. This helps make the atmosphere juicy, just as these storms like it. The last thing we have to introduce is a dry line that's going to be set to move into the plains and the Oklahoma region on May 3rd as well, and this will provide the lifting mechanism for the storms. So now we have our wind shear, our instability, our moisture, and our lift. It's a perfect setup for tornadoes. So at this point leading into the event, although forecasters are seeing these larger parameters come together for what could be a tornado outbreak, they're not convinced that it's going to happen. And this is because there were those smaller mesoscale features that seemed to be limiting factors in what would be this tornado outbreak. Another huge problem with the forecast of this event was that the models that meteorologists rely on, the numerical models and model guidance, were giving the forecasters vastly different model runs and extremely high discrepancy about both where the storms would be and how severe they would be as well. So this again leaves them with a high degree of uncertainty. And if you know anything about the Storm Prediction Center, they are not going to issue higher risks for anticipated severe weather unless they are really confident, and they just weren't confident on this event. So what they decide to do on May 2nd, the day before the event, is issue a slight risk, which is on the lower end of the scale, for a general area over the plains, which would include Oklahoma.
Morning of outbreak.
It's now early in the morning on May 3rd, 1999. As always, the National Weather Service is issuing their weather balloons to collect data, morning forecast, and the information they get back takes them by surprise. As early as 4 and 7 a.m., the data showed conditions much more intense than they originally had anticipated. Not only did the data show that the jet streak was much stronger than they thought, now around 90 knots, but the CAPE, the convective available potential,
4,000. Whoa, 6,000, 5,000. If that's CAPE, that is high.
in the atmosphere,
Damn.
is already at a staggering 3 to upwards of 4,000 joules per kilogram.
Woo, that is up there.
And you guys know that 4,000 is considered extreme.
Yeah, 1,500 is all you need. Like 850 is all you need for a thunderstorm, and about 1,500 is all you need for a tornado. And remember, 1,500 CAPE, joules per kilogram. And this day was forming them, or had CAPE values of 4,000, which is a lot. That is extreme.
So those two smaller features were what the National Weather Service needed to be convinced that this would actually turn out to be a larger and more threatening outbreak. So now, realizing this is much more favorable than they originally anticipated, the Storm Prediction Center reissues their convective outlook for the day at 11 a.m. and it includes a moderate risk for severe weather. But even still, this wouldn't be the last time they changed their forecast. Just before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's muggy, it's getting hot.
Yeah, that is
Clouds are clearing, which gives the sun more opportunity to create an unstable atmosphere. Winds are now really pushing into the area, and it's perfect tornado weather.
As the afternoon approaches, temperatures push into the low 80s, above average for this spring day. Stewart senses something in the air.
It was just odd. I kept telling Keith, something was going to happen that day.
National Weather Service again does another special weather balloon launch, and just before 4 o'clock, they decide to go back again, reissue the convective outlook at 4 o'clock, and it's now a high risk. So by this point, meteorologists and news networks have been seeing the increasing threat as the afternoon has been going on, and they're now working to prepare their viewing area for a potential outbreak of severe weather. Gary England is one of those meteorologists working to prepare his viewing area and issues what he calls a priority 1 to convey the gravity of the situation that he's seen. So now, in addition to going priority 1, storm chasers and emergency personnel are being sent out around the city in anticipation of this event.
Everybody calls it my hinky feeling. I called my boss and I said, I've got a really bad feeling about this one. I'm feeling hinky tonight.
While all of this is happening, media is trying to prepare their viewing area for a potential outbreak. The storm that would produce the world's strongest tornado has already begun.
The more cell.
Earlier in the afternoon, just after 3 p.m., a small supercell thunderstorm had formed in southwestern Oklahoma. It takes about an hour for this supercell thunderstorm to travel through the southwestern portions of Oklahoma before it eventually reaches the outskirts of the primed atmosphere and would very quickly begin feeding off of the cape that was ample in this area.
Yeah, we have a situation that's fairly dangerous. Storms are intensifying very rapidly, exposing thunderstorm development, and the possibility of some tornadoes with these storms.
You have to be aware of the weather. You have to watch it, especially if you're supervising an EMS system.
Hey, Frank, it's Mark.
As time goes on, you look at the cloud, the formations, and if you see the little puffs start blowing up, then you know that you could be in for a long night.
All right, I appreciate it.
Soon after, as the cell is continuing into this primed atmosphere, it would begin rotating enough to trigger its first tornado warning by 4:50 p.m. in Grady County near Cement, Oklahoma. Just a minute later, a small tornado roughly 25 yards in diameter touches down 7 miles northeast of US Route 62. Before we go further, I also do want to note that this supercell thunderstorm would produce a total of 14 tornadoes during this outbreak and during its lifetime. But for the sake of this video,
that is crack.
We're going to be discussing the few leading up into the Moore tornado.
Okay, I'm going to estimate 4 miles straight west of Surreal. It's, like I say, the funnel is real small. I'd say the funnel might not be any wider than 100 yards. But it's throwing lots of debris. It's very intense at the surface. The funnel at ground level is now growing. It looks like it's a little bit wider than it was a while ago.
Whoa.
So the supercell has just produced a tornado near Cement, Oklahoma. It wastes no time in taking advantage of this atmosphere and immediately starts causing F3 intensity damage. And this supercell is really just starting to get cranked up. While this one specific tornado in Cement would only last for a few miles before dissipating, it very quickly drops another tornado west of Chickasha, causing more F2 damage, and would actually hit the Chickasha airport and not only cause a lot of damage, but tear off the wing of an airplane that would later be found miles and miles away, actually in Moore.
It's damage here. Folks that are listening on the Bailey Turnpike, our recommendation from the Moore World Storm Center is to turn around and go back northeast. It's just that simple. Take a crossover. Be very safe as you turn around. Do not take the unnecessary risk.
Again, this particular tornado doesn't last for too long. After causing damage at the airport, again, this tornado dissipates. But these two tornadoes have been just a glimpse of what this supercell is really capable of. While the Chickasha tornado dissipates, this supercell is about
These are all
to
uranium
drop its
barrels?
ninth and most violent and deadly tornado, the Moore tornado. At 6:23 p.m., the tornado that would ultimately have the highest recorded wind speeds in history would touch down. It touches down just a few miles southwest of a town called Amber, and at this point, the atmosphere is at its most prime. The cape has exploded, and it's just a perfect environment for a supercell to produce a wickedly powerful storm.
Is headed now into the southwest metro area, beginning at Newcastle and Tunnel, and then potentially into southwest Oklahoma City. We recommend all forewarned crews that are in Oklahoma City to head into the southwestern part of the metro. Now we're going to another large tornado, and also a big deal. I've got big small-sided panels going out as well.
The tornado is moving at a northeast trajectory through Amber, and it would then cross over Highway 92. It's exactly at this point after crossing over the highway that many people report the tornado very quickly and eerily transforms from a very small tornado that's just touched the ground to now a massive 3/4 mile wide tornado at F4 intensity just in those first few minutes. Over the next few minutes,
just like the 2013 one, it was like a little tiny baby rope, and in 5 minutes turned into a monster EF5 killer wedge.
At this point, the tornado clipped a neighborhood east of the town of Amber, where several manufactured homes were waiting, and this would just absolutely shred those to pieces.
Man, that is one damn nasty. Oh, Lord. John's got a cellar in the house.
In the house? Yeah, he does. I've been in it, as a matter of fact. He showed it to me one day.
But you feel wind sucking that away. Look at that tree heading that way.
Yep.
The twister travels several miles while steadily increasing. It's been an F4 for a little while now, and a massive wedge tornado with no signs of slowing. And while you can see how large the tornado is, even at this point on video, there's no way anyone could begin to fathom how strong this tornado was as it moves into its next target, Bridge Creek.
Bridge Creek.
We'll get still. That's when it's bad. Listen to the roar.
It's a big boy.
Look at the stuff in the air. Oh, look at the stuff.
Yeah.
Debris.
Holy shit.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I wonder what that is.
It's coming right this way. We got people here watching. We're in an emergency situation.
It is so large. It's getting ready to move in the very distant area.
As the twister is moving over the Bridge Creek area, Josh Werman and his Vortex team are trying to get as close as they can within a safe distance from the tornado and collect as much scientific data as they can from the radar on the back into the cab of the truck where the computers are.
Bull is racing towards the biggest tornado, desperate to get as close as possible. They're scientists, and the leader of the group is Josh Werman.
So we should be getting very, very good dual doppler on this right now.
After 2 hours driving, they're starting to close in on their target.
Look at the tornado. Yeah, that was visible. That looks nice. I guess that's Roger Ronaldo now.
Tracking the tornado for an hour and a half, they can calculate where it's heading next.
Our forecast was that the storm would actually cross Interstate 44 and move towards Norman.
The radar is picking up the wind speeds from this tornado near its peak, and the information collected that the team gets back shocks them. The tornado has just measured over 300 mile per hour winds. They are witnessing history.
Okay, we'll have to redial. We're redialing.
As the tornado passes over Bridge Creek, it's immediately apparent that the damage here would be some of the most intense, not only of this day, but some of the most intense damage that's ever been documented. After plowing through Bridge Creek, the tornado now barely has weakened to F4 intensity, where it would continue on for several miles. It's still, of course, incredibly intense at this point, and the tornado is rapidly approaching much more densely populated areas of the Oklahoma City metro.
Wedge-shaped tornado could be in the range of 200 to 250 miles an hour.
Hey, we got just a huge multiple vortex tornado down here. It's right now about 45 miles out. We got maybe 45 minutes.
You're on Interstate 44, going to the southwest, turn around. Don't mess with this thing, don't go out. Now we've got a tornado right now close to the access road at H.E. Bailey Turnpike, north side of Newcastle. We've got baseball-sized hail in Newcastle right now.
The tornado is still 3/4 of a mile wide, so you can imagine just the massive swath that it's causing as it moves through these densely populated areas, destroying homes, businesses, anything that comes into its path. So at 6:57 p.m., meteorologist Dave Andra realizes that he's got to do something to convey the urgency here and that this is truly a life or death situation. He drafts up an alert and sends it out to the National Weather Service. It's the first ever
tornado
emergency. Things are also becoming increasingly tense because there is a lot of traffic on the roads right now, particularly on Interstate 35, which is now backed up because people are trying to shelter under the overpasses. This is unfortunately one of the parts where some of the most tragic stories occur. Just east of Bridge Creek and north of Newcastle, an overpass fatality would occur north of Interstate 44.
It's so hard. You folks all the way. That's here you go, thank you.
Kevin Weber, Kathleen Walton, and her son Levi are all seeking shelter under the bridge's overpass as the storm
this story is
approaches.
tragic.
The three of them go to the very top and hold on best as they can. Kevin Weber first recalls debris from the tornado as it's moving through the overpass of the bridge. Tiny pieces of debris piercing skin.
He carved his name into the
causing
bridge,
cuts.
didn't
Pretty
he?
soon after, a piece of a highway sign would come through the overpass and gash Kevin Weber's leg down to the bone. He then recalls the intensity of the winds pulling his body out from the overpass as he's holding on with his arms onto the ledge. He says that his body was flat, slamming against the concrete on the side over and over like a waving flag. As the storm passes, Kathleen is holding on to her son Levi, and the intensity of the storm is too much, pulling them both. And Kathleen realizes that her and her son both can't hang on at the same time. So she tells him that she loves him and decides to let go. Kevin and Levi, the son, and two others who are sheltering under this overpass survive. This is like one of the hardest fatalities that I read about. I mean, there were plenty of really awful ones, but this one is, a lot harder.
We begin this live coverage of the very severe storm, tornado.
Looks like a man or a lady covered in mud. This looks like their car. These people look to be injured from the tornado. Whose van is that? Oh, man, you are. Where were you guys?
Underneath the underpass.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had to hang on both hands. Some little kid up there,
It's really unfortunate that they happened to be here and the intensity of the storm was so much over this one overpass. There's a picture of where the people were sheltering under this specific overpass, where you can actually see the red clay mud that was being slung up against the bridge on top.
Man, everything is leveled out here.
The storm now heads northeast into the town of Bridge Creek, then on into the suburbs of Oklahoma City itself. Gary England is chief weatherman for Channel 9 TV in Oklahoma.
Most structures, most houses will not survive this, and it is moving toward Interstate 40. This storm needs to be below ground level. It's extremely dangerous.
The tornado continues into Newcastle, Oklahoma, causing
The shakiness in his
extensive
voice, man. To see me all just get
taking out
scared like that is not a fun thing.
killing several
You know it's
people,
gonna be bad when that happens.
many others, and causing a
running out of
massive
rubber.
swath of damage. It's almost a mile wide at this point and still at very high intensity. So at this point, the tornado weakens a little bit to F2 intensity. It's also here where it's going over more open fields and where you will also see a satellite tornado that comes down from the side of this tornado. The brief period of weakening and the satellite tornado wouldn't last for very long, as again it quickly recycles back into F3 and F4 intensity as it's moving towards more.
It's only like a county and a half wide.
Operations is hard to work with. It was tracking right towards the metropolitan area. It just got bigger, more serious. Our first reaction was, we're in trouble. This is not good.
The tornado is now tracking straight for more. It's at F4 intensity, and again, meteorologists are watching this in horror, realizing that there's nothing stopping this tornado as it is just recycled and is about to incur a lot more damage on a heavily populated area.
I'm sorry, Interstate 44, directly toward Newcastle is a fairly large. As you look at this tornado, it's moving toward it. I still see somebody driving down Interstate 44 to the north. That's control. And you're driving up. I tell you folks, I'd get the settle right now. If you haven't already done it, don't mess with this thing. Don't go outside and look at it because it'll kill you. Whoa. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Now you folks watch this thing now, as you watch this, keep in mind, hey, Christmas. Many structures will not survive this tornado. You need to be below ground with this storm. This is a deadly tornado.
The tornado, unfortunately, goes back to F5 intensity just as it enters Grady-McLean County line and into Moore. By this time, the tornado is now a full-fledged mile-wide wedge, and it's now rain-wrapped, drastically reducing the visibility of this storm and making it a lot more difficult for people on the ground to see what's happening.
We still see a huge tornado motion done.
Gary?
Yes.
We are a half a mile south of the tornado. We're getting wind gusts of 60 right now.
You're 1.5 miles south?
Half a mile south of the tornado. We're getting wind gusts of 60.
Blanchard is southwest Oklahoma City. To the Del City area. Moore. Right now, if they turn a look at the north of Norman. Okay. Right now, it's moving northeast parallel to Interstate 44. Now, can you hear me? Maybe I think. It's coming right up alongside the turnpike.
Dude, that view of the helicopter.
Oh man. Now, you folks watch this thing now. As you watch this, keep in mind. Hey, Christmas. Okay. Gary, talk to me.
I've never seen a video like that where all those meteorologists are just scrambled, panicking their ass off. I'm not blaming them for panicking. I mean, look, there's a freaking giant wedge tornado and it's destroying an entire city. Something straight out of a movie. Can you blame them for being worried?
This would, of course, end up being another widespread area of intense and catastrophic damage. 11 people will be killed in this area and another 293 injuries as well. It's now 7:30 p.m. and the tornado is crossing through Moore. The first place heavily impacted in Moore would be the Country Place Estates subdivision, where 50 homes were destroyed and one home was completely slabbed, which is where the F5 intensity rating comes from. This is also the place where police would eventually find that plane wing that we talked about from the Chickasha Airport. It was over here all the way in Moore.
Oklahoma City. Get off that sucker now. You got to run to a thrift pitch. Okay? Now this thing is moving toward I-44. It's probably going to take in part of Blanchard, part of New.
Close I-40. I'd say within a quarter of a mile or less.
Okay. And then about where it looks almost skirting. Almost skirting it.
Well, the direction it's going, it's going to be on I-44 for a while.
Yeah, it looks like it's going right down I-44.
Yeah.
You're watching a long track, very rare event. These usually account for only about 2% of all tornadoes. They are deadly. You about need to be below ground level to survive.
Another heavily impacted area would be around the Westmore High School. At the time, 400 adults and children were at the high school conducting an honor ceremony when the tornado would strike. Fortunately, the school did have reinforced walls in the auditorium, so they were able to take all 400 of the participants, put them safely in the auditorium, and although the high school did sustain a fair amount of damage, there would be no fatalities in this building. However, really tragically, police would find a dead horse outside of the high school in the parking lot, which is pretty disturbing. Another densely populated area hard hit was the East Lake Estates, killing another 3 people and pulverizing the homes in its path. Emerald Springs Apartments, there were another 3 fatalities when the 2-story apartment building collapsed. The path is so wide and there's so many populated areas that are destroyed and damaged that I can't even get to all of them. We're just very briefly covering the main ones.
I've seen lots of tornadoes. This thing is huge.
Oh my gosh.
Janeway Avenue was another incredibly hard-hit area where there would be 4 people killed and many dozens of homes destroyed. And this is another area where someone will be killed under an overpass. We discussed earlier that Interstate 35 was being backed up because of the traffic and people hiding under the overpass with their cars. This, again, is an area that had a fatality.
Heading south on Interstate 35 realize they are cut off by the mile-wide twister. More than a dozen motorists hit the brakes at the Shields Boulevard overpass.
And all the cars that were pulling up there were slamming into each other, rolling, and then people were jumping out. Me and Stuart started telling everybody, hold on to each other's hand, head to toe.
The horrified group lies on the sloping pavement with arms and legs locked together. A 26-year-old woman named Tran Bowie is running toward the overpass. She is steps ahead of her husband, who is carrying their 2 children, ages 2 and 4. As the tornado swoops in, the father drops and covers the 2 children. They desperately hold onto the guardrail. But the young mother isn't so lucky, as she is stopped in her tracks by the powerful winds.
And it just looked like somebody hit rewind on her, except instead of going next way, she went straight up. And that's the last I saw of her.
Just then, the full force of the twister bears down on the overpass. Winds are howling out to the 300.
Apparently because there's so low pressure, your ears will just pop.
The winds are approaching 300 miles per hour, and underneath the overpass they could accelerate even further. It's a very dangerous place to take shelter.
It is a dangerous place to take shelter.
The massive funnel is now less than half a mile from their death trap hideaway.
There's also a really famous picture from this event of an overpass from some survivors. a man named Pat Carter, who was an Associated Press photographer at the time, and a woman, Tammy Holmgren, and her 2 daughters were sheltering under the overpass when the tornado is approaching and barely misses them by 250 yards. Pat is able to capture an incredible image, and they were extremely lucky to have not been hit directly on. At this point, the tornado has weakened slightly to F3 intensity, still again causing an extreme amount of damage to many of the homes and buildings. Another 2 people would be killed here in a business as well.
I tell you, this is deadly serious. We've been talking about it for an hour or 2 now. The damage is massive.
Woo!
There is a half a mile to the left, right in front of us. It's leveled a house, a couple houses over here on 149th Street. It's just now, probably a quarter of a mile north of 149th Street, and trying to figure out, it's probably very near May.
Crossing Southeast 44th Street into Del City, the tornado moves through the highly populated areas of Del Air Housing Edition, killing another 6 people and damaging or completely destroying hundreds of homes. Then it crosses 29th Street into Midwest City, destroying another building at a Boeing complex. And it's also
Let's put this bolt is lined up to this right here, because then I can make the exact same bolt with my other side of the world.
In this area. Just one of those would be an auto booth where over 800 vehicles would be completely destroyed or mangled or a total loss. Several buses were also picked up here and tossed upwards of 0.2 of a mile. So again, just showing how violent it was. It did also consider an F5 rating at this point just because of the sheer amount of damage it caused to all these businesses, all the cars that were mangled and thrown around. It was really intense.
To the Del City area, more. Right now, it may turn a little bit to the north of Norman, but right now it's moving northeast, paralleling Interstate 44. This is a storm that you need to be below ground level.
The damage was consistent with high-end F4 intensity winds, damaging several more homes at this point before very quickly starting to weaken, and by 7:48 p.m., the monster Moore tornado has finally dissipated.
I will tell you, that's the damage past parts of Moore and southwest Oklahoma City. We think the winds.
Just a moment and we can begin. Please, step forward. Ah, yes. Welcome. Welcome.
So, this here's a vault, right?
Quite correct. And you could be one of our lucky new residents.
You do got food in the vault, right?
Of course. And a chance of new life. A question or two first.
You're gonna bring people in here and we haven't made food?
Of a good government.
Government? What the hell are you talking about?
It's all right. You're a good guy. Just answer the question.
Yeah, right. Just so you know, I got my eyes on you. Don't do anything funny.
You won't do for our special assignment. But welcome to our vault. Your new home. If she is representative of what's left above, the outside world must be rougher than I imagined. Are you ready for the next interview?
Why didn't she work as a test subject?
Skeptics and cynics rarely produce good data. No, we need someone willing to cooperate.
Raiders.
Let's continue.
All right. Hello. Welcome to Vault.
This is a real nice place. Real nice. And I can go wherever I like, right?
Within reason, yes. But I have a question for you.
Sure. What do you want want to know?
A hypothetical. Let's say the reactor core is melting down, and you're the only one who could stop it.
Is there something wrong with your reactor?
No, it's fine. Just pretend. Say you can stop the meltdown, but you'd suffer from extreme radiation exposure. What would you do?
Well, whatever you want. If you don't mind, I'm anxious to look around. If you're thinking about ripping us off, don't. I can see the writing on the wall here.
I think it's best. Goodbye. What a colorful gentleman. Clearly he won't work for our experiments. Here's hoping third time's a charm.
Just for clarification, what's specifically wrong with him?
An obvious liar would invalidate any subjective responses we need from a test subject. No, he just wouldn't do it all.
Let's do the next interview then.
As you say. Hello. Welcome to your new home.
Wow. A real overseer. I am so happy to be here. Hi. My name is Clem.
Yes. Clem, is it? Before you settle in, I have some questions.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Big eyes.
Answer anything you like.
Well, that's good. Here's a scenario. You've been assigned guard duty. Stand watch and make sure outsiders don't reach the perimeter. But from inside the vault, you hear a woman screaming. What would you do?
You want me to guard something? Sure. I can do that. I can do that right now, if you want. But I don't hear any screaming, Lady Overseer.
Nothing to be nervous about. Think about it and answer.
Sorry. If you tell me to guard, I guard. And I won't leave my post unless you tell me to. Is that okay?
Another question for you. What can you tell me about yourself?
Ah, she passed. But she was nice. You would have liked her. She killed a mole rat once.
Really? That's remarkable.
She fed me. God, I'm sorry. This place is so much better than the ditch I was living in.
Well, looks like we have a cooperative test subject.
Surely there are other traits you like about it.
Well, no matter how bad things got, she put us kids first.
Oh.
She fought until the end.
Oh.
Looking for a volunteer, someone to test some new devices that will help. Are you interested?
Yes. I'll help out. I like helping. That's me.
I like helping.
Always willing to help out.
Yes. I think you'll do nicely. And no time like the present to commence. Now that we have. The first step is to get him properly equipped and dressed. There should be supplies.
Sure. Clem, let's get you outfitted like a real vault dweller.
I'll do well. Promise.
I just want to trade a few things.
I just want to steal your shit.
I'm just so excited to be here. I'll do good.
Hey, we didn't tell him that we don't have food here, so I'm gonna be right back. Holy shit.
Our first vault residence. What a moment. Exercise is an inherently selfish activity.
Hi.
Our first vault residence.
Right.
Instead of using every hour, every minute, to further the goals of the community, a resident instead improves their body past the minimum requirements. Vault-Tec has devised a solution. The Power Cycle 1000. While you pedal, you provide raw power to the vault. A perfect answer to an inherently counterproductive practice.
But doesn't society benefit from healthy citizens?
Overall, our research indicates it does not. True, some short-term medical costs are mitigated. But exercise leads to longevity, which extends how long the elderly drain the vault's resources.
Holy shit.
Exercise overall is a societal ill we should and can cure.
Settlements can always use power.
Precisely. The prototype is far from perfect. There were incidences during its R&D. Maybe even the stray cerebral hemorrhage.
What? Overseer?
Oh, Clem. Don't worry yourself. This model won't suffer from those defects.
Oh, good.
Well, probably. Let me download the schematic to work Clem Hop. Yes?
By the way, Overseer, power, we literally have a Vault-Tec nuclear super reactor that generates a nice whopping 500 power. Vault Star. Huh. So it's called a Vault Star. Or maybe that's just like a sub company that makes it. But that's a pretty cool design. I like this thing. 500 power from one unit. Okay. This is literally like you just get a more expensive version of Vault Fallout Shelter. I need rubber. It produces 2 power.
Push Clem
Let's trade.
to the limit.
I'm just so excited to be here. I'll do good. You'll see.
Oh my goodness, the amount of Radix I got is... Ooh.
I want to trade a few things.
I'm just so excited to be here. I'll do good. You'll see.
Push Clem to the limit. The power must flow.
I wonder how high the vault numbers are.
121. Wasteful exercise, dude. Exercise ain't wasteful.
Push Clem to the limit.
Just looking to trade a little.
Huh. That's cool. Okay.
Excuse me.
Oh shit. Whoa, this is so beautiful. Uranium. You know what I'm thinking of right now?
Well, I don't know, but I've been told uranium ore's worth more than gold. So, McCad, I bought me a Jeep. I got that bug, and I can't sleep. Uranium fever has done and got me down.
Holy shit.
It's spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand. Uranium fever has done and got me down. Well, I had a talk with the AEC, and they brought out some maps that look good to me. And one showed me a spot he said he knowed, so I straddled the Jeep and headed down the road. Reckon I drove about 100 miles down a bumpy road out through the wilds. When all of a sudden I bounced at a stop at the curve of a mountain. Didn't have no top. Uranium fever has done and got me down. Uranium fever is spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand.
Take me and go my plan.
Uranium fever has done and got me down.
Drugs.
Started to climb right up to the top where I thought I'd find a hunk of rock that'd make it click just like I'd read about burning pig. On the second day, I made the top, and I'm telling you, Steve, I was ready to stop. The only clicking that I heard that day was a bones in the back on the spray. Uranium fever has done and got me down. Uranium fever is spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand. Uranium fever has done and got me down. Well, you pack up your things, you head out again. In some unknown spot where nobody's been. You reach a spot where your fortune lies. You find it's gonna stay for 7 days.
Oh shit.
Well, I ain't seen a people that blood's done coffee, and I've been fixing with a Geiger counter and picking my hand to keep right on sneaking. Uranium fever has done and got me down. Uranium fever is spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand.
Take me and go my plan.
Uranium fever has done.
Dude, there's so much uranium in here.
Well, I don't know, but I've been told uranium ore's worth more than gold. So, McCad, I bought me a Jeep. Uranium fever is spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand.
Take me and go my plan.
Uranium fever has done and got me down. Well, I had a talk with the AEC, and they brought out some maps that looked good to me. And one showed me a spot he said he knowed, so I straddled a Jeep and headed down the road. I reckon I drove about 100 miles down a bumpy road out through the wilds. When all of a sudden I bounced at a stop at the curve of a mountain, didn't have no top. Uranium fever has done.
Goddamn sentry bot?
Uranium fever is spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand.
Take me and go my plan.
Uranium fever has done and got me down. Well, I took the Geiger and I started to climb right up to the top where I thought I'd find a hunk of rock that'd make it click just like I'd read about burning pig. On the second day, I made the top, and I'm telling you, Steve, I'd ready to stop. The only clicking that I heard that day was a bones in my back that on the spray. Uranium fever has done and got me down. Uranium fever is spreading all around. With a Geiger counter in my hand.
Holy shit.
Uranium
It's the toughest caves I've had to complete. These are the final caves I'm gonna have to complete.
You head out again in some unknown spot where nobody's been. You reach the spot where your fortune lies. You find it's been staked by 17 other guys. Well, I ain't been bit, so with a Geiger counter and a pick in my hand, I'll keep right on staking that government land. Uranium fever has done it.
Yes, I actually have this saved to my Spotify. Cry about it.
With a Geiger counter in my hand.
I'm not to take me some government land.
Uranium fever has done me down.
Mm-mm.
Hey. Go check that body.
See if he had anything worth taking.
Aw, man, look at all this vault space that may not even be able to be used. Or, well, it won't be able to be neatly connected. What? How long has that happened there? Hey, what? How'd it break? I don't know why it just broke.
Hi.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. I broke your... Oh,
Did you do that?
I'm sorry. I just got so excited and I wanted to do a good job and I kept pedaling faster and faster. And then the whole vault went kablooey. Please don't kick me out.
Hey.
Really?
I was looking at the data for the power supply. If I am reading the report correctly, you chose a lavender and vanilla aroma display.
I feel really relaxed. This vault is the best.
We're engineering a new society, not some sort of day spa.
My clothes still smell funny.
What? Vault-Tec subcontracted out chemical research to Hallucigen Incorporated. It was supposed to be delivered before. Well, before. But with the mail service out of commission, other arrangements must be made.
The whole world we knew died.
Enormously. That's why these we must make sure the inheritors are...
I'll be back before...
Excellent. Just grab a package for Overseer Barstow. Once we have that...
See you guys.